Video editing is very easy to learn, and the challenge is finding your own approach to telling a visual narrative and finding the right pacing for your stories. The reason I include video editing in the motion design class is if you know how to do motion design, everyone's going to assume that you know how to edit video. The two go hand in hand. Like I said, that's why it's part of this course. And I could show you the basics of video editing in 5 minutes, but it's one of those things where with anything, the more time you put into it, obviously the better you will get at it. Here's the basics of video editing. Step 1, you gather all your footage, use only your best takes and the strongest pieces, then use only the parts you need. You trim away the extra frames you don't want. And it's important that what you take out is as important as what you keep in. And this is all part of learning how to edit, where you're going to have to figure out what your story needs and when it's just too much. And lastly, you put the pieces in your timeline in the chronology you want to tell the story. You don't always tell a story in the order it was shot, and you can get playful with how you arrange the clips. We're going to start with the actual process of editing. So anyone who's going to be following along, you see the video clips I told you to download, and I have them in my downloads folder already. So I'm going to start off by clicking the new project button, and up here at the top is where you name it, and the line below is where it's going to get saved to. And you just click browse to save it to a different spot. I'm just going to save mine to the desktop. First step of editing is importing your footage. So I'm going to show you how to import the footage, and then I'll explain the panels. To import your footage, you can double click inside an empty spot in your project panel, or go File, Import right there, and then just click Open. Anyone have any trouble importing their video footage? So I'm going to explain these 4 panels, and then we'll start editing. The first one, obviously, was the project panel. This is where you assemble all your clips. It's just like the project panel in After Effects. It's where you put all your footage. The timeline is where you assemble your clips, and your tools for editing are right between your timeline and the project panel. So all the clips go in here, and you put them in the order you want them shown. Now there's 2 windows up at the top. And by the way, everybody should be in the editing workspace. All the workspaces up here at the top. Editing is right there. It's going to diminish the number of panels you have up, and you just focus on learning how to edit. So we're working in editing. So there's 2 monitors up at the top. Source is what your video clip looks like before it has any effects on it, and the program monitor is the end result, what the viewer is going to see. So think of the program monitor, it's exactly like the composition window in After Effects. This is the movie screen everyone's watching when you're all done editing. So this is what the viewer is going to see. This is what the clip looked like beforehand. And wherever you are in your timeline, that's what's going to display on your program monitor. I'm going to show you the absolute basics of video editing. So let me see what these different clips are. I'm going to show you clip 1629. Just like in After Effects, there's 2 ways of getting this. Well, actually, there's more than that, but I'm going to show you the 2 basic ways. Okay, so you could grab your clip and drag it onto this page icon, or you can select the clip, right click, and choose New Sequence from Clip. Okay? And most of these were shot, frame rates we're not going to worry about tonight, but these bottom 3 were all shot at the same frame rate, and the top 2 were shot at different frame rates. So this is what a video clip looks like, and this is what your sequence looks like. This is what we have in the timeline. So I'm going to name this right here. I just named that timeline sequence that you can see. Here's what we have in the timeline. The bare bones of editing, like I said, are come in on a good frame, go out on a good frame. Use only your best takes, use the best parts of your footage, and then put them in the timeline in the order you want it shown. So I'm going to move my playhead and look at the clip. And just like in After Effects, you can scrub, which is when you grab the playhead and move it. You can see there's some camera shake at the beginning, and I just want the part where the tractor goes across the beach. So I move my playhead to where I want it. And if you've ever worked on an iPad or any Apple programs, this is the absolute beginner novice way of editing. And I'm going to show you how to edit more professionally, because tonight and Wednesday we're handling editing. You grab the left edge of your clip and you move it. That changes the beginning of the clip. And I'm going to scrub through to where the tractor goes off the screen. And then I just grab the other edge of my clip. That's an example of coming in on a good frame and going out on a good frame. I changed where it ended and I changed where it began. So here's where it begins, there's where it ends. Any question on just grabbing an edge and moving it, just like in After Effects, how you change when your layers start and end. I'm gonna undo that. Alright, so now we're gonna move on to the more advanced stuff. That's the absolute basics of video editing. You change the beginning and the end of each clip. Then you put them in the order you want them shown. Remember, come in on a good frame, go out on a good frame, and use your best takes. And remember, what you take out is as important as what you keep in, so you've got to make a lot of good decisions. Now, I showed you how to physically cut, and this is just one way. I'm going to show you many ways, but this is the basic beginner way of learning, okay? Now, pacing and rhythm are crucial parts of video editing. When you think about the pacing of everything you edit, where can you speed it up? What's the bare amount of information you need to convey your idea? Sometimes having more is just more. And you gotta bear in mind, viewers have very short attention spans these days, okay? So it's a juggling act of showing just the right amount and letting your piece breathe. I'm gonna give you a quick audio example. You notice I'm taking pauses in between my sentences. Think of that also with your editing. You just can't have everything smashed through. The viewer has to have time to absorb things. So, I'm going to paste something into the chat. I just pasted in a second link. This second link is the exact same story, just told at like half to 1/3 the amount of time. So, click on the second link and we'll meet back here in a minute and a half. And then we'll compare the two real quick. You see how two people told the exact same story with different pacing. They had different rhythm and they had different technical aspects. The first one, it had a title sequence, it had an establishing shot. The establishing shot shows you where the story is taking place. Exactly, that's what we're gonna get to. The first one had more interaction with the parent and the child. And it didn't really add that much to the story because the story was so short anyway. So it was almost slowed it down. And you're going to have to figure out when and where are you going to pick up some of that emotional detail. Also, second video. So the first one, they had a stabilizer, like a steady cam or a gimbal. So they were moving the camera around a lot more. The second one was told with a tripod. So it would show one character and then that character's view, like what they were looking at. And they cut back and forth between the two cameras. So you'd see what the dad was looking at and then you'd see the son's point of view. And, the other main difference is in the ending, the one, since it had camera motion, it stopped the camera just before you got up to the top of the bed, which has a more impactful ending. So, like I said, there's lots of ways of telling a story. And now that you see a little bit of how what you keep in and take out changes greatly and can make your video stronger or weaker, I'm going to start showing you some more advanced editing techniques. Before I do that, any questions on the absolute basics, Now you're going to learn how to edit like the pros do. I'm going to get my timeline, and again I'm going to select clip 1629 in my project panel over here. So if I double click on the clip, it opens up in the source monitor, which is above the timeline. So any clip you double click on will open up here so you can see what your footage is. And at this point, I'm going to show you one feature. Yours probably open up different from mine because mine's set up for my workflow. Right down here, you've got the list view, which shows you the frame rate, how long it is, the aspect it was shot at, and you've got the thumbnail view. Thumbnail view is good for looking at stuff. Like if you got a bunch of footage you didn't shoot, you could say, okay, this is all B-roll, like outside stuff, and sort through your footage much more easily. Because remember, you only want to use the good takes and the ones that add your story. So there is a point to having this thumbnail view, and you could use the slider to make your thumbnails bigger or smaller. But I like working in list view when it's stuff that I know what I shot. We're going to hop up to clip 1629 in the source monitor. And now you're going to start to learn the professional way of editing. So right here, this is your playhead. And we already know the playhead shows you where you're at in the timeline. When you're in Premiere, if you press the left and the right keys, they'll take you forward and backward one frame. The up and the down arrow keys will take you from cut to cut in your timeline. So I can use these arrow keys to get to the exact frame before the truck comes onto the screen. And this is how you can get very precise, down to the frame for exact editing. Now, there's two ways to start setting your cuts. The first one we add is going to be called your in point, and the next one will be called the out point. So there's an in point and an out point in every clip in your timeline. This will set your in point, this will set your out point. Now you notice there's key cuts. You could also hit I and O. So I'm just going to hit the letter I, and now you see this dark gray area the viewer will not see. The light gray area, there's my in point right there. This is what the viewer is going to see. So I'm going to go to just after it leaves the frame. I'm holding down my right arrow key, and now it's off the screen, and I'm going to set my out point. I could click here or hit the letter O. Any questions on using the in and out points or hitting I and O in the source monitor? Now, if you've got a slower computer, or say you get some huge footage, because you can get some big video clips in your time. Right here is where you change the preview resolution, this little drop-down menu. So if you need to see it faster, that's how you change it. Okay, so we set the in point and the out point for this clip. Now, when you're filming, always shoot more than you need. This gives you more choices as an editor. So the part here we're not using, this is called the head, and the part over here we're not using is called the tail. That's what's in between what the viewer is going to see. So we set our in and out point. If I click and drag from right here in the clip, I get a hand. That hand means I'm going to take both the audio and the video for that clip. If I grab from this video clip over here down to my timeline, that'll just take the video, and the sound waves will take just the audio. So I'm going to want the audio and the video, so I just drag there, and there they both are. Again, if I just wanted the video, I'd grab the video clip right there, and if I just wanted the audio, I'd grab that. This is why the pros edit in the source window before it goes into the timeline, for three reasons. One, you've got the option of bringing in both the audio and the video, just the audio, or just the video. And the other reason for this is, let me delete these clips by hitting the backspace key. When you edit this way, you have a much cleaner timeline. If I were to just grab every clip I ever shot and threw it in here, I'd have a big mess, and it'd take up a lot of space. So you actually work faster just bringing in what you need. And let me show you something. I'm just going to drag my clip. I'm using the selection arrow tool. You can drag the edge like I just did to have the rest of the footage there. This is just keeping my cut, but the footage is still there. Okay, so I'm just showing you that. This is working non-destructively. Any questions on using the in and out points or I&O and then bringing your clip into the timeline? I'm going to double click on the zebra one now. It's 1778, and I'm just going to scrub through, and there's some tail swishing and the foot goes down. I'm going to want to go to just before the tail starts to swish, and I'm holding down the arrow key for that. So I'm going to cut, it's moving there, right here. I'm going to come in on this frame, scrub through, and then right when the tail goes down, I'll set my out point. Remember, I could click here or hit the letter O, and then I'll just drag my footage into the timeline. You've almost got all the basics of being a video editor. This will zoom in and out of your timeline, okay, by clicking and dragging these handles. And this will just help you be more precise when you're editing. Now, remember I said editing is about coming in on good frame, going out on a good frame, using your best clips, and then putting them in the order you want in your timeline. So if I want the zebra to be before the truck, I just click and drag and move them like that. And to close up empty gaps in your timeline, right click on the empty gap and choose Ripple Delete, and your footage will snap together. So now you know how to rearrange your clips in the timeline and choose just the best parts. Okay, good. Now the next clip I'm going to send you has a scene from Star Wars in it, and it is May the 4th. I'm going to give you the time code to go to for this video clip. One moment. Okay, so we're going to watch that clip from the 3-minute 12-second mark to the 5-minute 8-second mark. It's in the chat, and that is a quick masterclass in seeing how long you hang on your frames and how it can give or take away the emotional resonance of a scene. I started off with that first witch story where, you know, it's longer but didn't really give you any emotional resonance. You don't feel for either of the characters, and that showed you the other one that was all pure story with no character development. And then this compares character development with different lengths of the cuts. So I showed you the in and the out point, and that's, you know, dragging the playhead and hitting the I and the O key. And remember, right and left will take you one frame, and if you got more than one clip in your timeline, up and down arrows take you from cut to cut between the clips. Those are your shortcuts as an editor, up and down, left and right. I'm just moving the clip around with the selection arrow. When you trim it up here in the source window, the rest of the footage is still there. You're working non-destructively. When you trim it in the source monitor, that gives you more space in your timeline to work with the rest of your clips, because you're going to have a lot of them in your projects. All right, so quick recap. Source monitor, this is your untouched footage, and you can edit the in and the out points and then bring it into your timeline. Project panels where you store all your clips and images you're working on. Program monitor is where you're at in the timeline, plus any effects that are applied to your clip. Okay, this is your audio meter over here, so you can see the audio going. And remember, you never want it to go to pure red. That will be distorted audio. And right here in between your project panel and the timeline are your tools. and so far we've only been using the selection arrow tonight to learn the basics of editing. So I'm going to show you one more little part of the intermediates of editing, and then we'll switch into lab time. See how these blue boxes appear? That is the layer that you have selected. So if I were to copy and paste any video clips, it'll paste into where this blue mark is. And the same will apply with your insert keys up here. So that's how you can select more than one or deselect a layer, these blue boxes. The top are the video layers, the bottom are the audio layers. They're separated with V and A. All right. If you want to lock a layer, you click the lock and that unlocks it. And this is very handy once we get into some of the more in-depth tools, locking and unlocking. With audio, M mutes entire layer. So it's not just the clip you have selected, it's everything in this track, everything in this layer would be muted. S solos an entire layer. So pretend I had 6 layers of audio, like 4 people talking, some background music, and some sound effects. If I just wanted to focus on the people that were talking on this channel, I could just hit solo and it'll mute all the other audio tracks below it. If you're doing voiceover and adding in audio from here, you click on the microphone to record. So that's how you lock, select, mute, solo, and record your audio. And with your video, you can lock it here, and the eyeball icon will show or hide it in the timeline. So the last thing I'm going to show you, with your selection arrow, you can click and drag things onto any layer that you want. And then this way, clips can overlap. And you notice when I click the eyeball icon, that would hide any video clips in this layer. So now you know how to put clips on different layers, select and deselect entire layers, as well as what all the layer controls mean on that track. And it's invaluable to learn when and where to use these icons. If I'm shooting a 2-camera interview and I'm just doing hard cuts. Hard cuts are when there's no transitions between an end point and the beginning of another clip that are next to each other. So if I've got my cameras stacked and it's like a wide view and then a tighter shot, what I sometimes do is I'll have a video layer for B-roll that I put in over top of it, and I'll have a layer above that I have the eyeball icon on. So if I've got my footage synced up, because you want the talking to line up in both clips, the shot that I'm not using, I put in the layer that has the eyeball turned off, hidden. So if someone goes, I want to see the other camera angle, I just drag it down and you can see it again. It's a good way of just having a faster workflow as an editor. That's some of the basics. And Wednesday, we're going to build on this, and I'm going to show you a lot of helpful tips and tricks to push you into a more intermediate level of editing where you'll actually be able to pick up freelance work and things like that once you fine-tune and practice these tips and tricks. So hopefully with that little intro course to editing, it'll open your eyes when you're watching things. And like I said, you can learn it pretty quick. By the end of Wednesday night, you're going to have a really good workflow and some really useful professional work strategies that'll help you out. Okay, so you want to fade in a title and then have it turn into dust when it blows away. Okay, so for that, there's a couple ways you could do it. Let's try and find a fast way without using a particle system. 1 second. What this is going to do, this is going to be like a little crash course in figuring some things out and trying out stuff. So here is the type. And obviously remember, first thing is always move your anchor point. And mine's where I want it, over here at the bottom, just because it's where I want it for here. I'd want it somewhere on the bottom. it's not really going to impact this animation. Now, fade in, we all know, is transparency, which is the T key. And don't forget, you can get to all of your main 4 pillars of motion design: position, scale, rotation, opacity, through the transform of any layer, or like I said, the shortcuts are the T, S, R, and P keys. So I just hit T for here. We're going to want to fade it in, which means we're starting at 0. We have our anchor point. We've got the playhead to where we want to start, and then we clicked our stopwatch, and then we go forward for however long we want it to fade in. Change the amount that we want the fade in to be. Remember, it doesn't always have to be between 0 and 100. Okay, and then however long you want it up, let's say, then the effect is going to come in. Let's see what Scatterize does real quick. Okay, so you're seeing what Scatterize is doing. That's Scatterize. Let's see what Scatter does. That's what Scatter's doing. Scatterize, for my money's worth, probably has a twist in it too, it looks. Oh yeah, look at that. You can twist as well. Okay, that's pretty good. And then let's try, set that back to 0. Oh, and you can go the other way too. So going that way blows it up that way, and going that way blows it up that way. Turn off that effect, and let's try, like I said, shatter. Because like I said, sometimes there's more than one way of doing it. That's why what I do is I keep my effects up here, and as I don't like when I get rid of it, but then I could always turn them off and on and compare them quickly. And shatter, let's do boop boop doop doop doom. Rendered look, the shape of it. Let's try glass. Sure. Up the repetitions. So now you see the more repetitions I have, the smaller the pieces are. You change the direction of them. You can even extrude them to make them be a little bit more three-dimensional. So it's really which look you want. Do you want that broken glass look that shatter gives you? Or, like you were saying, the more vaporized look, which Scatterize gives you. So we go here, we'll mess around with Scatterize. We'll set it to 0. So our type fades on, and let's say it's up for 2 seconds. Then I click my 3 stopwatches up here. Then I go to the amount that I want to scatter it. Let's see if it goes the other way. I'll go the other way for this one. Turn it a little bit that way, and a little bit in the other direction. I'll go forward some more. Scatterize it even more. So we're starting to get the shattering look. Now let's focus on improving the look of it. And remember, toggle switches and modes. These are your modes. These are your switches. Let's give it some motion blur. And the motion blur is automatically enabled. Now let's try a turbulently displace first, and then we'll try a displacement map. So I'm going to throw turbulently displace on here. And now we're getting a little bit more of a... We'll wait till the shatter starts. Right there. A few frames in. We'll go to before it starts. Right there. And we'll set those to 0. Yeah, so I'm just working. I figured you'd go with Scatterize. So I'm going to hit the U key so we can see all my keyframing. And I want to figure out how much the displacement do I want to have. Because this default's looking pretty decent. Okay, so then you want it to disappear. And we can, so it's drifting away. You could either have it blow completely off the screen to get rid of it, or we could try using a wipe or a transition. So let's try a wipe. We'll try a linear wipe. I'll throw that on here. And let's say we wanted to go, blow off that way. So you see the amount of the transition. I have it set to 0. But now I want you to see there's a hard edge here, and that's what the feathering is for. So now we've got this nice little bit coming in. So if we have, okay, so we know we wanted to go from left to right, and we see the effect working, and we've got the feather. To fix that, I changed the direction. So I'm setting it to -90. So now it's going to, we want it to disappear, and I wanted it to go in the other direction. Yes, let's try 90. So now it's going to blow off from left to right. Okay. So we're going to set for where that happens, right about here. I'm just arbitrarily picking it. So I hit the U key. Here's my linear transition. I'm going to have it start here. Then however long I want that to happen over. Set the second one to 100. And I do not like the way that looks. It's too harsh. Because you got this nice organic thing happening, and then that hard line just comes along. So we're going to say linear wipe, goodbye. Now we also have displacement maps. And what we can try is, let's do a quick test. I'm going to make a new solid, throw a gradient on it. Gradient ramp, my bad, sorry. And remember, crosshairs, you click on them once, then you click where you want to set them. So now we're going from black to white. And let's try this. So I'm going to hide that. And on here, I'm going to put a displacement map. And I'm going to turn on, let me pre-compose this. I'll call it gradient. Move all attributes into a new comp. Now remember, when you're working with effects, pre-composing fixes a lot of things. So I just pre-compose things before I even run into a problem. The layer, it's the gradient that we had right there. And let's see what's going to happen here. So we've got our gradient, and we've got start and end ramp. And right here is where we're going to want the displacement map to kick in. So I'm going to drag my keyframes to here and click the lock up at the top. Let me zoom in to look at this, edit that. There's my lock. I clicked it. Now we're going to go back to that main animation. And now I can edit these how I want by sliding the gradient black and white points to see how it's moving. You can see how it's creating this look right here. So it looks like the white is pulling it off to the side. And I'm going to turn off the look at this, edit that, and then mess around with my displacement map. That's where it's going to start blowing up. So let's mess around with our displacement now. So I zeroed them both out, and I'm going to move forward a little bit, and let's try that and see how that's going to go. That's what it looks like with a straight gradient like this. Let's see what it looks like with a fractal. Let's crank up the contrast. And we'll have the evolution move over to the right. I mean the offset, sorry about that. Well, we'll still keyframe the evolution anyway. Remember, the first number is full rotations, the second number is degrees, and then I'm going to offset the fractal. Right here, there's my offset under the transform. I'm going to move this over to the right. There we go. Now let's see what that looks like. That's doing a little bit better. Still not there yet. So I'm going to turn off that displacement map. Keep the turbulent displace on. And let's try one last thing. What I did there is I just blasted out that scatter amount, and that helped get it off the screen entirely. That might be a bit too abrupt, so that's just in the scatter amount. I'm just getting rid of some of these extra scatter amount settings. And you see how severe that is without that in-between step. So if we start at 0 and we go to minus 10,000, let's do about minus 5,000 here. I'll try minus 3,500. Just to hold on the screen a little better. Probably even change that from 3,500. That's a little bit better. That's way too fast though, obviously, even for this effect. I'm surprised how much life we got with that scatterize effect. The being able to twist it on the left and the right in different directions really gives it that nice organic particle look. We could probably even decrease this. Minus 20. Minus 1,500. Any other questions anyone has that I can help with during this lab time? And you see when you blow it up to full screen, you see some of it lingers a little bit there, but that's all up to you. I like that because it's sort of, it almost looks like a time remapping. Gives it a little bit of personality. Like I said, this is all for you to try with whatever you want, and you know, just showing you a little bit of more than one way of getting something done. Yeah, if you're confident, if you're stronger with Illustrator, work in Illustrator. But like I've said from day one, don't forget, let me pause this. I'll pause it on a cool frame. There we go. And I'll zoom back in. Don't forget, like aside from the type tool, you've got the pen tool and all the shapes here. So if you are doing simple shapes, it's always faster and easier to do them in After Effects. Plus you've got more editing options. But if you're doing like advanced gradients and some really fine detail, then yeah, stick with Illustrator. And also, I'm actually glad I made this file for Carmen. Now let's pretend that all this, well, this is, I set this up as multiple layers. And let's pretend it's just these three that you want to have together. what I would do is I would save as and delete this layer on the duplicate and just make all this one file so that you've got less layers to have to worry about. So think about your layer management in Illustrator, because that's going to slow you down in After Effects. Like your highlights, your shadows, and your details. If I've got all this wild stuff happening on this smiley face, I'm going to want to try and keep all that together. So I always have my layered file, and then do a save as and whittle out the layers you don't want, just to help with your layer management. And a quick recap for anyone who forgot how to break down in Illustrator. First, I'm going to make sure my color profile is right. And is that, yes, that's document, color mode, RGB, and I'm already in the 1920 by 1080 template. So you select every layer, hit your little hamburger at the top, and release layers to sequence. Then you gotta drag that layer out and delete the empty one. Same with this. Every single layer. That's why I say if you're doing simple shapes, it's faster to do it in After Effects. And then I delete the empty layer. Now, the face had multiple layers. So, see, that's what happens when you've got multiple objects on one layer. And always delete the empty layer. And last but not least, this one, drag it out. Come on. And then delete the empty layer. And remember, like I've said, I work as non-destructively as possible. So there was my original artwork. I'm going to do a save as and put _SEQ so I remember that was sequenced out. And then I hit save. The default settings are fine. So I'm going to import, probably would be one for the text layer. Yeah, okay. All right, yeah, okay. So once you've sequenced out what you did, so it's file, import file. When we're in After Effects, I go to where that is. It's right here, my sequenced one. Now remember, you only click one time. And down here in footage, you want to retain layer sizes. Now when I hit import, it comes in as its own sequence and everything is layered out. And always remember to click your collapse transform icon. That is in your switches. Remember, there's your modes. You click switches and modes to go back and forth. Always click your the transform, collapse transform, because that'll keep your images sharp no matter how big you scale them up. Like that, see? Nice crisp edge. What would happen if I turn that off? See, it starts getting blurry. And then it's crisp again. So that is a quick recap on sequencing out and bringing in your layers. But remember, if you create all your artwork in After Effects, you don't have to do any of that because you already brought it in here and created it. Here's a little fun fact for everybody. The type right here. Since we have all these effects over top of it, this is more or less procedural. So I could make this say whatever I want. There's May 4th today. May the 4th be with you. And boom, there goes the effect. Still works because of the way we did the effect. We didn't use any masks. We didn't use any mats. It's just effects over the type and it updates itself. Now, just for the fun of it, let's try something ridiculous, because it's all about being ridiculous. It's just for my own morbid curiosity. Oh, that's wild. That almost looks like a etch painting. Throwing the colorama effect on it. That's wild. Now, let's see what happens. Remember, the order of your effects in the stack will change things as well. And also, it's not playing nice with 32-bit, because I was messing around with some glows earlier. So, right here, there's my warning sign saying not going to play well in 32-bit. To change that, I just hold down Alt or Option, and I click the little BPC, that's bits per channel, 8-bit. Click again, 16-bit, 32. Hold down Alt or Option when you click them. And see, just moving Colorama around in my layer stack gives me a wildly different effect. But it's pretty wild looking. And just a reminder, Colorama works off of grayscale images. So I threw a gradient on this just to give it something to work with. So the gradient has to go above Colorama. And now when it blows up, that's colorized as well, because it's all tied into that effect. You just have to watch what happens with your visibility with your values, that they don't get too dark, or else they disappear into the background. And as I said before, it's all just a matter of playing around, experimenting, trying to have fun, and being creative. The order you have your effects in your layer stack will change the way they look, as I've said before. So, even once you get something looking the way you like, just move the effects around in the stack and see how it changes it. Might be better, might be worse, but it's all about playing around. And any questions, just put them in the chat or email me to the school email address. I'm just going to go a few frames. And then, like I said, click the crosshair, move it to where you want to go. Like that. Then go a few more frames. And change the beginning point, so it zaps across the type. Test that out. Oh, I didn't keyframe it because I'm a genius. So, I click my stopwatches. The origin is going to start over here. And the direction, I'm going to set right by the origin. Go a few frames. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to move my direction. Right there. And then go a few more frames. 1, 2, 3, and then move the origin point over to that side. Didn't think we did that many keyframes tonight, but we did. I'm saying I'm adding this in between keyframe so that the origin stays where I want it to. Let's see what happens if we don't move that. And don't forget the trick I showed you where if your keyframes are all selected and you've got the playhead over them, you can move them uniformly on the X or Y axis, like this. That's up for you as the designer to decide what the duration of the effect should be. And again, you saw earlier tonight how pace Okay, so I'm reviewing Jacqueline's stuff right now. This looks pretty good for this one sequence. So is this sequence I have up the main animation? Like, is there more parts to it, or this is where it's at the moment? It's looking pretty nice. Like you said, there's going to be more to it and other things. What might be a nice little push is this layer that has the translucent wave effect on it. Okay, what would happen if these were above the other ones? Just to try it out. And I know I mess up the layer, but that's fine. I'm not saving over your file. What will help with the depth of this is your layer effect stack, like we were just saying. If these elements go over and below the type, it'll definitely give you more of a sense of space and depth to the shot. Let me try and undo some of the mess I did. Yeah, now that's looking a bit better. So like if you could have more elements in the layer stack, oops, sorry about that. That'll definitely help give it some more visual depth on the screen. And it also might be interesting to do a little bit of subtle texturing on the letters too. But is each one its own layer? Because that's what it looks like. Oh, that's fun with the blur there. There's a lot of layers, which is good. You know, it's a nice unified effect you've got going on. We've got a camera in there too. Fun. Wait a second. So did you mask the type? Yeah, see, this is okay. So when you do get a chance, make sure all the artwork is up there for me to take a look at, and then I'll get a full idea of what's going on. I'll be able to help troubleshoot and push this with yeah, when I can actually see the full effect. But it's looking nice, and that's with stuff missing. It's still looking good, so it should be pretty interesting. Yeah, like this is, you know, I'll need that clip. This is just any artwork, and I really like this nice, clean, organized workspace. It's very good, very professional. Made it pretty easy to find stuff. So, good job there. It almost looks like, to even push this further, if you could find like a scary face or someone in torment and puppet pin the face to make it look like it's moving slowly in the background, faintly below all this other stuff, it'll add some interest, drive through the feel of the show, plus add some depth, because you'll have, you know, this haze over top, then the type and the blurs, and then that way back. Yeah, de nada. Let me see if I can test that out real quick. And we'll see what type of motion we can get with puppet pinning this still face. And like I said, anyone who can get me any work, I'll try and take a look at it as soon as I can. Okay, so I'm going to bring back up the brightness here just so I could see what's going on here. And we'll fade it on right around here. We'll start the fade. And this is where I'll do some puppet pinning. We'll see what happens, what we can do with this face. Let's hide the layer above it. I'm just putting a bunch of pins to see what can and can't move. So we can get a little bit of motion in there. And I put in far more pins than I needed just to mess around and find out. So here's where we're going to start having it move. So that's also going to be where I do my opacity. Turn the type back on. We do not want that to be, we want that to be very faint in the background. Just a nice subtle element to add a little bit of space. Barely there. Go a few frames. Fade in from there. See that? So if I move those pins further apart, remember the further apart they are, the slower the motion, smoother the motion as well. And always remember to move your render bars so you don't have to render the whole thing. Save yourself some time. Look at that. That's not half bad for a few minutes worth of work. See what I mean? Just a couple puppet pins in the right spot, spread out over a far amount of time, easy eased. You can maybe even do like a glitch over the face as well once you've got this motion looking the way you want. But that's what I'm talking about, layering your scene. Just that little bit adds so much more depth to the shot. Yeah, so like I said, it worked best having the puppet pins around the mouth and just focusing on the mouth. But any other types of playing around you want to try, and that was just a still image, you know. So, and also, I chose rotating it and keeping, you know, see, here's what's moving, that's near the plane, and I felt the angle added a sense of dynamism rather than just a straight on face. Just shows you unlimited possibilities with After Effects. It's just pushing yourself, trying different things, trying to make your surface seem deeper, not just flat, layered, texture, shading, contrast, watching your values, making sure things can pop. It's all little steps, and next thing you know, you have a giant pyramid in front of you from all the little steps that you put down in front of you. And again, with the puppet pin tool, you just put down the pins where you want to move something as well as what you don't want to move. Then you move your playhead, and then you just move the pins. It's that simple. Maybe you could even have a little tear coming down the face or something like that. And if I were to do that, what I would do is make sure nothing is selected. We'll start it right about here. Oops, daisy. So that looks really good with that haze going over it. It adds so much more depth to it. So with nothing selected, I'm going to draw a little shape here with my points. And obviously, when you got a shape, you can animate the path. You just click that stopwatch, move forward, and then change the shape of it. Now remember, you can move the path points as well as the Bezier curve handles. I'm just quickly mocking this up to take a look at it. I'm gonna push all these up a little bit. Do that, and then I can just click here. Maybe I'll just do it that way to save myself some time. That, okay, now let's try a little bit of a gradient in there so it's not so flat. Look at what we want. So we've got some of that going so far. And I'm gonna start my layer here by trimming it. Holding down the Alt and hitting the bracket next to the letter P. That's going on. Now we'll try a blending mode. And don't forget, you can click this button here to hide your path. Now I'm just going to randomly try some effects in here to add a little bit of depth to it. See that? A little bit of tone, blending mode, adding some blur. Then you get a little bit of a liquid look, like a tear, without having to make some particles. You don't want to soften it too much, because then you can't see the edges. So it's just a big balancing act. So now let's see if that added to it. And the blur will slow down the render a little bit, but you need that softness. See what I mean? And that's just messing around a little bit. And that was a shape path that we did. So, I mean, clearly I would slow down the motion of that shape because it's moving too fast. And that's just dragging those keyframes further apart by selecting them, right-clicking, choosing Easy Ease. Now see if that helps it by slowing it down a lot more. Remember, for dramatic, slower movements help, and it also adds a little bit of subtlety. And obviously if I paid more attention to the shape, maybe having the shape path get a little thinner. But I'm just showing you the concept and how to do it. That's adding a lot of life to that photo that was still. You know, it's just a little bit of puppet pinning, a little bit of a shape, some gradient, blending mode, blur it. Who knows the difference, you know? Because there's so many other elements happening that you don't focus on it, but it does add a little bit to the animation. So I hope that helps you out a bit. And very nice work. It's coming along very nicely. Can't wait to see the rest of it. And I just want you to notice I did not pin down the shoulders and whatnot. So you can see the hair move a little bit there. That would not happen had I pinned that down. I'm going to try a starch pin, see if that just holds it down in place a little better. It's a little better. It's nowhere near as dramatic as the hair flying all over the place, and the mouth is still moving, which is the important part. So just be careful what you pin, where you pin, but it'll do most of the work for you. Well, if there's any other questions, just let me know. And you could always reach out to me by email. And make sure you put all of your art, your files, your projects in the Google Drive folder, and that will help me to help everyone stay on track and making this final animation done a little less stressfully. And I'll be seeing everyone Wednesday night, again, 6 to 8:30, and we'll wrap up video editing and then use the rest of the lab time to help with your homework assignments. And just remember, if a flat color isn't working for you, try a gradient, and then try blending mode, and then try some effects. Tone really helps push After Effects a lot. This teardrop that I did, you know, there's going to be some highlight and some shadow, so I just did a little bit of a gradient and then messed around with the blending mode, and that gave it far more depth and volume than just a normal flat shape. And I could tweak this and fine-tune it more, but I just wanted to show the concept and the exploration. So I always think it's more important to show people these concepts and techniques rather than try to waste an hour and a half to make it look perfect. You can learn more by seeing these concepts and these techniques and just trying them over and over again, and then try to fine-tune the details to get it where you want. That's usually the best way to learn, is to get the overall idea and then fine-tune it until it looks the way you want it to.